So this is not on tomorrow's quiz. Again, this is not on tomorrow's quiz. Okay? But we still want to know for the future how to do the second half of the homework here. All right? And it's really simple. When we multiply fractions, all we do is multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. So right here, we know we're multiplying because there's no sign between the parentheses. And the top, 2 times 5, we're going to get 10. And the bottom, 3 times 7, we're going to get 21. And you try to reduce it, but you can't reduce, so that's your final answer, 10 over 21. And of course, the rules still apply. What do I mean by that? This is a positive times a positive. The answer is positive. So your answer is 10 over 21. So it's really easy to multiply fractions. It's more challenging to add and subtract fractions. So right here, you could multiply. Well, first of all, what is a negative times a positive? A negative. So you know the answer is going to be negative, right? Now, you could go through and multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. Top with top, 2 times 2, or 2 times 1, that's 2. And on the bottom, you get 5 times 2, that's 10. So far your answer is negative 2/10. However, you could reduce that fraction, negative 2/10. So that becomes negative 1/5, right? Now, you don't have to do it that way. Here's another method where you cross cancel. Now, what do I mean by this? We have a 2 up on top and a 2 on the bottom. That's like saying 2 over 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So you could actually cancel that 2 out, and make them ones, right? Put a 1 right there and a 1 down here. And then go through and say, okay, what is 1 times 1? That's 1 that you get right here. And what's 5 times 1? That's 5 that you get right here. And of course, a negative times a positive is a negative. Does that make sense?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So you don't have to cancel, but whenever you do have, like let me do a random example here. Let's say 3/4 times, let's say 1, actually 4/5. How's that? Yeah? So 3/4 times 4/5. We do have a 4 up here and a 4 down here. So the easiest thing to do is just cancel 4 and 4, because 4 divided by 4 is 1, right? So what do we really have? What do we have left over on top? You have 3, and there's nothing left, so it's like 3 times 1. That's just going to be a 3 up here. And down here, well, you have that canceled. That's just like a 1. 1 times 5, it's going to be a 5 down there. So 3/5 is your answer, right? For this particular, not for number 14. For number 14, the answer was negative 1/5. So whenever you see the same number up on top and on the bottom, you could cancel it out. But you don't have to. You can multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom, then reduce later. So for example, if I went back to this one that I got an answer of 3/5, I could have multiplied 3 times 4. 3 times 4 is 12. And I could have multiplied 4 times 5 and gotten 20. Okay? But then 12 over 20, you could reduce by 4. So you could divide the top by 4 and the bottom by 4, and that would give you the same answer, 3/5, that you got right here. So it's up to you if you want to cancel, or if you still want to go top with the top and bottom with the bottom, and then reduce. It's totally up to you. Now, once again, guys, this is not on tomorrow's quiz. So you're probably thinking, why the heck are you talking about it right now? We're going to need it next week. We're going to need it on future quizzes. So let's jump to number 16. Is there anything that I should cancel? The 4 and the 8, but even before that, 7 and 7, that's gone, right? That's 1. And you could also cancel 4 and 8. You don't have to, though. You could reduce later. So if you just want to cancel the like ones and then multiply through, go for it. Or you could cancel out the 4 and the 8 and have a 1 left over up on top and a 2 on the bottom. But how about this? Yeah, 4 times 1, that's 4. 1 times 8, that's 8. And of course, a positive fraction times a negative fraction, that'll be negative. But this could reduce to 1/2, so your final answer is negative 1/2. Of course, you could have canceled the 4 with the 8 and gotten a 2 left over down here. That would have given you the 1/2 also. Anyhow, I hope you guys understand that. Are there any questions on this? No? We also have division of fractions. Okay, division of fractions. So whenever you divide by a fraction, you're going to convert the division to multiplication. This division, you're going to convert it to multiplication, and you're going to flip this fraction, you're going to flip it, okay? So number 18, it's going to be a -3. The division is going to become multiplication, but this fraction, instead of 1/3, it's going to be 3/1. And don't forget about the negative that's in front. Please bring that down. That's a -3/1. So you really have -3 times -3, because 3/1 is still 3, right? So you really have -3 times -3. And what is -3 times -3? +9. A negative times a negative equals a positive. Once again, this is not on tomorrow's quiz, but we're going to need to know it in future quizzes next week, the week after that for sure. So whenever you divide by a fraction, simply change it. The first one, 7, well, that's an ugly 7. Let me erase that. 7 times 8/1. That's really just 7 times 8. That's 56. So it's really easy to divide by a fraction. All you do is change the division to multiplication, and then you flip the second fraction. Okay? Of course, if you had a fraction to start with, kind of like, let's do number 20. -2/3, that does not change. -2/3 stays the same. This division changes to multiplication, and you flip the second fraction. So the sign stays, it's negative, but it's going to be 2/3 instead of 3/2. And then you multiply the way you normally would, the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. And even before that, a negative times a negative equals a positive. That's right. So 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. And we said it was positive, so 4/9 is your answer right there. Again, it's not on tomorrow's quiz, but you need to know it in the future. Let's jump to exponents, okay? Number 24. This guy right here, that's called the base. This little guy up here is called the exponent. Okay? So the exponent tells you how many times to multiply the base with itself. Once again, the exponent tells you how many times to multiply the base, the base with itself. Okay? So this base is, whoa, what's happening? This base is -2, and the little 2 up on top tells me to write that -2 2 times. So it's really a multiplication problem. A negative times a negative is positive. So your answer is +4 right there. Okay? So that's how to do exponents. Expanding is what it's called. So like right here, the base is 2. It's in parentheses. The exponent is 3. So it's telling you to multiply the base with itself 3 times. So if you expand it, that's 2 times 2 times 2. That equals what? 8. That's right, and it's +8. Okay? Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. I do want to mention that there's a big difference when you are, well, let's first start with 27 here. You have -1 in parentheses to the 5th power. So you could expand it, -1 times -1, and write it 5 times, okay? So the fact that we already know is that a -1 times a -1, that's +1. A -1 times a -1, that's +1. So that's really a +1 times a +1 times, bring down the other -1. So what's your answer going to be? -1. And it becomes this easy, guys, when it comes to the base of -1. What? You gotta be kidding me. Clear it up. Let me see. There it is. Kind of. There it is. Okay. So if you have this, the base -1, the base -1, and it's inside parentheses. You have to have parentheses. And your exponent is odd. This is 5. That's odd. that means that you're going to be able to pair up all of them except one. And that's why your answer will always be -1. So if I say -1 to the 35th power, that answer will be what? -1, because the exponent's odd. However, if I had -1 to the 36th power, that would be even, and you'd be able to pair up all the -1s, and everything would become positive. So that answer would become +1. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Once again, this is not on tomorrow's quiz, so don't freak out about it. This is just a heads up for what we're going to be working on in the future. Okay? So once again, 30 and 31, one has parentheses, one does not. The one that has parentheses, you're going to write this whole base 2 times in parentheses, so that's -3 times -3. That'll give you a +9. But this one over here only has 3 squared, no parentheses, so you're not including the negative sign. So 3 squared, that's really 3 times 3. And the negative sign that's out here in the front, we're just going to bring it down. So that's really a -3 times a +3, which in this case is -9. So the parentheses also make a big difference. Anyway, this is not on tomorrow's quiz. You don't have to watch this video right now for tomorrow's quiz, but for next week, absolutely.